This.
So, Jeff Lutz, who should be here on Wednesday nights, was unable to make it. So I went running around the internet and I found Larry Goldberg, who couldn't make it on Monday, who could make it on Wednesday. Anyway, I think you all get what I'm talking about. I'm just glad to see you, Larry.
Thank you. I guess I was your last choice. So
No, second. It's just Jeff's night, you know. So,
well,
so Larry, you've had 2 days back to play with your Cybertruck. This morning, I reported on a very, very long 15,000 mile, 3 month in Cybertruck review, and he had a lot of little nitpicky negative things to say. Did you happen to check that review?
I haven't yet. No.
You have not looked at it. Okay. So was your Cybertruck everything that you hoped it would be when you got home?
Oh yeah. I got it cleaned up. We're taking it to Florida tomorrow.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Look, anybody who's very particular could find particular things. I'm sure I will find some stuff that I don't like. I've had so many good cars. One thing I find is that there's always enough, that you're not comfortable with. And I don't care who makes the car. There's always something, But this car is something. It is amazing. It's truly amazing. It's and the beautiful thing is, I know it's going to improve.
Yeah, just going to get better and better. That's right.
Yeah,
Absolutely
yeah,
right.
yeah.
All right. Well, let's dig into some fun stuff from today. I want to start with Nvidia and the Carpesi letter. And he put this interesting list together today. He says, Nvidia is now larger than the GDP of every country in the world, short 7. It's larger than the entire crypto market combined. It's 5 times the market cap of Tesla, 6 times the market cap of Walmart, the market cap of the entire French stock market. It is Canada's GDP plus 1.2 trillion in cash, 13 times the market cap of AMD, 3 times the GDP of the city of Los Angeles. And Amazon and Berkshire Hathaway combined, and the collective net worth of the 12 richest people in the world. I thought that was a funny one. It's those 12 people have a collective net worth the same as Canada's GDP. Anyway, so he also says it's worth more than the entire U.S. oil and gas industry, and more than the value.
So you need to stop for 1 minute.
Okay,
and
I'll
get
stop.
something off my chest.
Okay, all right.
These people who compare the total valuation of a company or a thing or a person's net worth to the GDP of a country or the total revenue of something, it's like somebody comparing a tomato with a carrot. These are 2 different things.
Right.
They are so different that the comparisons are not only trite, they're silly. I mean, to say that, it's equal to the GDP of, the GDP is revenue.
Right.
The total value of Nvidia is an asset value.
Right.
Generally a multiple of revenue.
Yes.
So if you want to compare Nvidia with XYZ total net worth or GDP, then look at its
valuation.
Yes. So it's just so, but it is very high in value. There's no doubt about it. Yeah.
Yeah. The last one he gave was that it's worth more than the combined value of all the buildings in New York City, which I question. I wonder if that's true. Anyway.
Well, it may well be right now, but it doesn't sound right to me, but it's possible. I mean, right now, the value of buildings in New York are not that great.
Not that great. So he says, since October 2023, Nvidia has added 2.3 trillion in market cap. So that in less than a year, 2.3 trillion in market cap. I'm not remotely making an argument that NVIDIA isn't worth this amount. In fact, I think it's probably worth it, and it's probably going to go higher. But I bring it up for this reason. It doesn't even mention the massive amount of wealth that this has created for the folks who owned it or who continue to own it. And that increase in market cap has made millions of individuals around the world much wealthier. The 300 billion pop for Apple this week made millions of people wealthier.
Right.
Microsoft's big run. These are paper gains, but not always. Some people have already taken some profits. It's always available to sell immediately. It's very liquid. Does this matter? Will this matter? This kind of a tremendous increase in assets in terms of how we see the overall economy. Larry, we talked about all these changes, the demographic changes, the way people are not getting married, the way people are not having kids, the fact that people are getting older and older, our society as a whole getting older, population shrinking. But this is another number, a crazy number in terms of how much this is adding to people's net worth.
It's such an interesting question. I think it's definitely going to pump the valuation of a lot of funds and a lot of 401ks, therefore, and a lot of IRAs. The number of retail investors in NVIDIA, I imagine, are relatively limited. It's not like Tesla.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Tesla has tens of thousands of retail investors holding a fairly significant slug of the company.
Mm-hmm.
NVIDIA, my gut tells me it's less. NVIDIA was always a good counter to own. I owned NVIDIA for years and years. I sold it back in 2020, I think.
Mm-hmm.
When I cut in 2020, I cut my portfolio by 2/3. But I don't think that there's a very large retail component, but it certainly pumped the market as a whole, pumped the indexes, and we therefore can assume it pumped a lot of people's retirement funds by a fair amount. Did it make a huge impact? Not really, because if you look at the S&P, the S&P's gone up to a record level.
Yep.
Gone up quite a lot, but it hasn't gone up by some gigantic number. Now, a lot of that, if not the bulk of that, is actually NVIDIA.
Right.
But nonetheless, if you look at S&P as a whole, which reflects, all these funds and therefore there's 401ks, it hasn't been remarkable beyond the fact that it's at the record level. So I think I'd answer your question, your implied question, and say that it's had a good effect, but not a halo effect beyond, of an extraordinary nature.
Okay. So now we'll add.
And the other thing I will say about that is that a single counter driving up that high always leaves a huge vulnerability if anything happens to it. So
yes, that's another question. It's another issue that I think I'm going to bring up in a minute.
Yeah.
But I wanted to go further now because we all look at Tesla right now. We've just had this announcement a week ago with Elon saying that he thinks that that Cathie Wood is right on the CyberCabs. He also believes that the eventual, or he didn't give a date, but at some point, the Optimus is worth 25 trillion. So we add the 25 trillion to 7 trillion of CyberCabs and 3 trillion for everything else, and you get to 35 trillion. Well, I just took the 25 trillion number and I asked Siri just a little while ago to divide that by 330 million. And it turns out that would be 7 $7,500.
You made a mistake though.
Oh, I did?
It's 3.3 billion.
No, I was doing it by the number of people in the United States, not the world.
Oh, sorry.
So I was only dividing by the US.
Yeah.
So it turns out that would give a $7,500 per person, per every man, woman, and child in the United States. If that were to happen.
That's one time. What do you think the total asset value of every person in the United States is?
The total asset value for as an earner, as they're earning.
No. That's income.
No,
Again,
I meant the asset value. I meant the asset value based on their earning capacity. Yeah.
But what do you think the average person's asset value in the United States is?
Oh, the average we just talked about that, I think a couple of weeks ago there. It was around 100. I mean, it was around $1 million.
So we're talking about 0.7%.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, these numbers sound gigantic.
Yeah.
But when you look at them in perspective, it's one company, 25 trillion or 30, that's a lot. And we can project that in 10, 20 years, there are companies going to be there. And Tesla has probably as good a chance as any, maybe better chance than most of being there. But by then, 10 years time, what do you think the net asset value of average person in the United States is going to be?
Yeah. Okay. And by the way, the $1 million was per family, which would change it a little bit, but
yes, you're right.
Not per person,
right.
But it wouldn't change it a lot. Yeah. So the number, while it's huge, in fact, 25 trillion would be 60% of the entire current S&P. So it was
depending on what else happens to this.
Yeah, I said the current S&P.
Yeah. Look, we're talking about very large numbers, and we're talking about potentially the most valuable company on earth and the most valuable company ever.
Right.
But time will tell. There's a lot going to have to happen for all of that to occur. But I don't think that a single company has that kind of level of effect. Now, having said that, I was just in Norway.
Mm-hmm.
Norway is an incredibly wealthy country. I mean, extraordinarily wealthy. Norway ships about $250 million of oil a year, which is a lot for a small country because only, I forget the number, maybe 10 million people in Norway. But they have taken this income and they have sucked it away into their pension fund. What do you think their pension fund earns? Not what it's worth. What does it earn every year?
I have no idea.
300 million.
300.
More than the oil revenue itself.
Oh, I'll be darned. 300 million or 300 billion?
300 million.
300 million. Okay. And the oil revenue is how much?
250 million.
I see. Okay. All right.
So if you look at the total population of Norway, I don't know what it is. On the top of my head, I'm guessing 10 million. 10 million people, and they're earning 300 million a year. No, I'm sorry, it's 300 billion. Whoa. The fund is worth 1.25 billion. 1.25 billion. They earn 300 million a year, 300 billion a year. 300 billion a year. And they have 10 million people in the country.
I still think there's something that can't be right. It can't be 300 billion. That would be the 3 times the earnings of Apple. So I think,
of course it can be. Of course it can be.
Okay.
The fund is worth 1.25 trillion.
Oh, 1.25 trillion.
Yeah.
Okay. So
I
you
mean,
think,
Apple is just one company.
yeah,
This is the pension fund for an entire country.
I see. Okay. All right. Yeah, powers of 10 could drive us crazy today with these big numbers. Okay, so 300 billion. All right. Wow.
They're earning more money from their
Right,
pension fund
right,
than from the oil. So they
right.
have socked away all this money. Now, in the United States, we would have spent that money and 10 times more. Besides, we would have borrowed against all its future revenue. They borrowed nothing against the future revenue, and they
Yeah,
socked away a very high
right,
percentage of it over
right.
the many, many years.
Yeah,
And that's the power of compounding. And now, if you take 250 billion a year, divide that by 10 million people, that's 250,000. It's $25,000 per person they're earning.
yeah,
Another
yeah.
couple of years, everybody in Norway can retire without having robots.
Sure. Yes, 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 yes. And by the way, while we're talking about powers of 10 and mistakes, earlier when I said $7,500 per person, now that I found my notes, it's $75,000 per person.
That's a little bit better,
That
but
makes sense.
remember, every family's worth $1 million. So if
Yeah,
it's three and a
still,
half people in a family,
right.
that's about 20% of what the family's worth today.
Which should be, yeah, which should be significant, which should be an important piece. So I do think it should be part of the future equation, or at least something to be looking at, because it's not just Tesla, as we've pointed out. The AI, AGI revolution is going to create a few more of these. Nicholas thinks that Amazon is going to pop big time. People are now wondering whether Apple, Microsoft, or Nvidia will be the first to 5 trillion. So there's an awful lot more of this coming in this.
Yeah, a lot of them are going to collapse, though. A lot of these valuations are going to collapse because a lot of them are going to lose this AI race. Some will, and the AI thing may or may not pop. So I don't think there's a clear path towards all this valuation occurring.
So then let me ask you the other question, which I've been asking for a month, and I think you and I talked about it briefly, but it's gotten worse since then. Are we due for a minor or even maybe a significant retrenching of the S&P?
Well, for the S&P to retrench, Nvidia would have to decline.
almost.
Because it's such a large proportion of it. Things can go wrong. They could stumble.
Right.
The next generation could turn out to be a bust. I think the most likely downside scenario, if it comes, will be from a lack of a success of AI to deliver value.
Mm-hmm.
So, it could be like we talked about the .com crash. There could be an AI crash.
Right.
So even though the internet proved of inestimable value, it turned out that the money that we put into all those companies in 2000 was badly spent, and all of them went back. Well, not all of them, but a very large, by far the biggest proportion of them went bankrupt. So it's quite possible there could be a bust. Doesn't look likely. We just heard that the run rate at OpenAI is over $3.5 billion. I think that was the announcement.
Right.
Microsoft is, they are stashing it. But I will say this about Apple. Apple could be the next bust.
Oh, okay.
Here's the thing. Apple used to announce something when they were ready to actually ship. No, where they had already shipped.
Right.
And the stuff was in the store.
Mm-hmm.
In recent years, they started talking about, product to come, and then they had these goggle things that was this terrible bust. Terrible bust. It was the worst product ever from a major company. I can't even begin to describe what it is. And nobody points at it, by the way. Apple has lost its mojo, in my judgment.
Mm-hmm.
Now their stock price is up because of an announcement of a product to come sometime in the future.
Right.
Who knows what they'll bring to the table? But I'm suspicious. I'm not excited about Apple's future.
So the biggest thing on Apple, I think, will be if the improved Siri combined with AI is in the next gen phone, the one that comes out probably in October. If this next number 16, I forget, 17, something like that, if you have to buy it to get it, then I think that's why the stock got bid up 300 billion, was because of that. If that doesn't happen, then I would be in agreement with you. If it either goes on all phones, you don't have to buy it to get it, or if they miss that version, that phone, and it's the next year's version, or it's later, coming soon. You have to buy the phone, but it's coming soon. It'll be February, March, or April before it happens. I think you can see a pretty good pullback on Apple.
Yeah, I predict that it'll come and it'll be a big disappointment.
Oh, wow. Okay. That'd be wild. That would be another way for the stock to go down for sure, if it was a disappointment. Yeah, I just
it's going to be OpenAI, so we already know that OpenAI is the leader in the field.
Right.
Despite the others catching up pretty rapidly. I have this simple theory that LLMs are going to be like dime a dozen.
Yeah.
That there'll be a half a dozen of them. They'll all be roughly of the same ilk. They'll slightly different characteristics. And that it will be the people who control data that is of great interest to a specific community. That community will pay a premium for that data. And if such a private garden, a walled garden, can provide value to its community, then that agent who has that private data will do extremely well. So, a company that has claims data, huge amount of claims data, company that has a huge amount of, I don't know, shopping data.
Right.
They'll do very well. But the general data, everything that's available on Google or everything that's available on, whatever, it's too broad and too general. And I think that, there'll be a half a dozen companies who will be able to provide that. And so there'll be a race to the bottom. Unless there's somebody who's so distinctive and so advantageous, as Google was with search, in their product, that they become, the leader of the field. And Google should have the opportunity to do that, given what it has in YouTube and in its search.
Sure.
But so far, it's actually been very poor.
True.
I was talking to a potential investment, potential company I may invest in, and they're using Gemini. That's the Google product. And they were, there was a lot of shaking of the heads.
I see.
So who knows?
Yeah. So, so to your point, then you might think that Nicholas Gibbs is right. If Amazon has all this data on shoppers and tremendous capabilities in terms of their potential for AI as well as their storage, then they might be one of the big winners over the next couple of years.
Don't discount Amazon. That shopping data is really interesting. It has a lot.
Yes.
A lot of information. So I think that's very valuable. I don't know I don't know whether Google has just lost its way. I mean, we may see a meltdown of one of the greatest companies on earth.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they do kind of manipulate this next. I mean, let's face it, so much this next year is just going to be kind of nutty in terms of the things that are going to happen. In fact, you could even say the next half year, because we're looking at Starship 5 and maybe 6 and maybe 7, which could be mind-blowing enough. Then you've got 8.8. That's just in the Tesla world. Early next year, we're probably going to be seeing some pretty good robots out of Tesla next year, and some of the others, some pretty good robots. Now you add in all the next level that's going to be happening with AI in terms of its capabilities, but also in terms of the next manifestations, the actual hardware and apps that'll be employing it, and how those are going to start to impact things. This next 12 months has got some potential to be just crazy.
Exciting.
Exciting, yes.
Yeah, I was on a talk panel talking about, when's the Tesla stock going to go up?
Yeah.
And I said, not until revenue and earnings go up, because the market is just not prepared to value promises of these new products. And actually, I see Gary Black wrote a piece today, a very good piece, I thought.
Yes. Yes.
But he says that clearly there's some attribution of value being put on that because the earnings can't support, the number that's there right now. So there's kind of, we're in this middle stage that people are being guarded about selling their Tesla because of that potential future,
Right.
but not prepared to go all in.
Right.
He hasn't sold all his Tesla. He's got a small proportion left, so he wants to keep his toe in the water.
Uh-huh.
So, but things are going to happen at such a pace and so unpredictably. And I remember in 2019 when the market was kind of going in Tesla, was going up and up a little bit.
Yeah.
A little bit. It was going up,
Yeah.
by 40%, and then kind of stabilizing. And people were saying, oh, it's over, maybe it's not going to happen. And then in 2020, we had that first quarter result that was just blowout. And the market and the stock went through the roof. And that could happen to us here too, that we could have one of these, catalysts, and then suddenly Tesla's part of this movement of Microsoft, Amazon and Google, and of course, OpenAI, which is not yet public, but we'll see. I mean, these are incredibly exciting times, and some people continue to insist on, the FUD and the old game of 2019 and 2020, and they learn nothing, nothing.
Yeah. 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 So what you've had an opportunity, you've been all over the world, you've been meeting folks from all different cultures, all kinds of Tesla fans here, there, and everywhere. You've been back now for only 2 days, but I know that when I go on a vacation, even for a few weeks, my mind starts to expand. I start to allow the brain to do some of the work instead of me trying to do it all the time. So did you come back with any kind of new ways of thinking about things? Did you feel like, okay, I can kind of see the road ahead now a little better because of this vacation time?
Not on a global basis, but I definitely learned that the Tesla community, I met a lot of people, a lot of Tesla people. And I definitely learned that the Tesla community in Europe is very vibrant.
Mm-hmm.
And that the folks that follow the company there are as committed, as we are, and they're as, focused as we are on the realities of the company. In a way, maybe even more so because, they're they're in this environment that just isn't as dynamic, perhaps, as the environment we're in here. But they're as passionate as we are, no doubt about it. Did I learn anything? Yeah, one thing I learned is that we have got to get our charging act together in this country. I mean, Biden passed this IRA and they can't get a bloody charging post up. I don't want to criticize the president. I don't want to criticize, any party, but honestly, guys, got to do better than this. This is a disaster.
Yeah, and it's absolutely. I was thinking about it this morning, but I've thought about it. I'm sure you have too over the last few months. If you want to look for the reason why we've had a slowdown in EV sales, it has nothing to do with the normal curve. I don't think it even has anything to do with interest. Well, it might have something to do with interest rates, but mostly it's the charging network, because people are passing along to their friends, oh, I bought a Mach-E and I can't get it charged. I bought a Volkswagen and I can't get it charged. And so that kind of negative news, we used to say, when I was, running companies, if you get one negative comment, 100 people will hear it. You get a positive comment, only 10 people will hear it. And
absolutely.
And that negative news has got to be out there really bad with regard to the charging network for these other brands. So not necessarily Biden's or the administration's fault that happened in the first place.
Yeah.
Lay that off to everybody, to all the other manufacturers, et cetera. But you're right. They've had a couple of years now and they've got 7 total stations. Is it stations or posts?
Oh, posts.
Oh, 7 posts.
It beggars the mind. I mean, but I don't want to say. I will say that the destination charges in Europe are terrible. They are shocking. Here we're used to a destination charger from Tesla. You just plug it in and it works. Right. Anything non-Tesla, it's a pain. In Europe, it's not a pain. It just doesn't work.
Doesn't work at all. Okay.
They're terrible. And everybody knows it, because everybody I spoke to in Europe, they laughed when I complained. But the high-speed charging network is fantastic. Total have stations everywhere, and there are quite a few. Now, Ionity have stations there, and they're a pain to use because you got to. Oh, don't get me started. In places where you can just touch your credit card and go, that's fine. Yeah. With the Tesla, of course, you just charge and go. Charge it. Yeah. But when you have to register and you have to download an app, and then you start the problems. Because none of them have got their software right. None of them. It's a disaster. I don't want to get into it because I could spend hours giving you stories that you wouldn't believe, actually, because they're too outlandish, but it was bad. After the first 3 weeks, I gave up trying. Okay. I just gave up.
Just had to find a Tesla location, or you said that one brand was pretty good.
No, actually, the high-speed chargers in France are fantastic.
I see. Mm-hmm.
Some very good ones in Germany. I didn't try the ones in Germany. I gave up trying in Germany.
Yeah.
The Total stations, and all the major oil companies have got stations, and they're by and large terrific. Now, Tesla just makes it a lot easier. You don't have to fuss with credit cards. Sometimes my credit card failed at the Total stations. I don't know why. They had some problems. But the Tesla, it was a joy and a pleasure. And I never had to wait once. I did a lot of miles. I mean, I traveled, I traveled the length and breadth of Europe.
Without FSD, Larry, I just don't know how you did it.
It was, what? That was the biggest issue. That was the biggest issue. But, the German autobahns are not that great. People are all, oh, it's fantastic, and there's no speed limit. Yeah, there's no speed limit for about 40 miles, and then you hit a blockage that you can sit for an hour.
Oh, I see. Okay. Yeah, I was only on the Autobahn once years and years ago, Larry, and I have my favorite story about that. We were flying along the Autobahn. I was with three German fellows, and we were, moving really fast, even though it was raining. And a motorcyclist passed us, and I'm like in the rain, and he's passing us, And then we passed a sign, and it said deer crossing. And I turned to the German fellow that knew how to speak English, and I said, "So what happens if that motorcyclist hits a deer going that speed?" And he goes, "The deer dies and the motorcyclist dies." In that flat German humor.
Yeah. That's what happens.
That's what happens. It's just a matter of fact.
There's your explanation. Simple as that. Yeah, I was past. I mean, I restricted it to 140 kilometers an hour. I restricted my speed because that's the speed at which the auto steer was working.
Oh, I see. Okay.
It had auto steer. It didn't change lanes. It didn't do navigate on autopilot. Right. Nothing of it. But it had autopilot, which is just lane keeping. But it was restricted to 140, and so I had to, restrict to 140. I was passed by a guy who must have been doing, I think, 300 kilometers an hour.
Oh my gosh!
Because I timed, anyway, it's incredible.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So, any other stories, Larry? We have no. Okay. Well, so the market opens tomorrow. Let's see if we have any kind of information here that'll help us make decisions between now and then. We have got. I always like to start with the bonds, and there's up 0.2, so we're not really seeing anything there that's going to tell us anything, and the rest of them haven't quite opened yet. Yeah, we're too early for the rest of them. But the bonds, Larry, they're coming back down to something that's pretty okay. I mean, it's kind of surprising. I'm still saying one at the most, probably no interest rate cuts this year from the Fed. And you?
I'm expecting a thud. I think if the interest rates come down, they're going to come down with a thud.
With a thud.
Yeah, and then I think we'll see the Fed suddenly act pretty rapidly.
I see.
That's what I'm thinking, but I could be wrong. But I've been calling for a recession for almost a year now, so I'm probably wrong.
I'm still at 30% and leaning towards the third quarter. I'm looking at these recent numbers and thinking, as you and I talked about, I think last week, about the two economies, that there's an economy that's doing fine and there's an economy that's not doing fine. And when you mix those two together, I think you might end up with a negative number in the third quarter. We'll see. Oil down 10 cents and Brent's unchanged, so really no action there. But again, it's at 81.47 on the Texas Intermediate, so it is now bounced back up to where it's going. Not going to help the inflation situation. Natural gas almost at $2.91, getting very close to $3 again. So that's again not going to help. Gold almost virtually unchanged. Silver up 0.87. 29.82, almost to $30 again. And then your favorite, Larry, copper.
Okay.
Up 0.35, sitting at 450, but that's down quite a bit from
I was going to say it really did not presage a very big uptick in industrial activity.
Right. But there's that other aspect we've talked about, which is the electrical thing, which everybody's now talking about. It took me like 4 months to find anybody that's talking about it. And then when I find out, now everybody's talking about it. The dollar steady. The Bitcoin had fallen badly under 64,000, Larry. And now it's back up at 64,868. So that's still pretty low compared to where it's been.
What did it reach, Randy? I wasn't following.
74 was the high, I think.
74.
Yeah, I mean, ballpark. Yeah. And then the equities for tomorrow morning. We continue with the NASDAQ being the star, up 34, the Dow being not the star, down 67, and the S&P unchanged in the middle. So that's where we sit. None of that, I don't think, helps us at all to think about what's going to happen tomorrow morning.
No, it really doesn't. We're in this holding pattern.
Yeah.
And I don't think, everybody's excited about 8.8. I don't think 8.8 is going to move the needle.
Wow.
I do think, though, that, hello, Joe, AJ is talking about 420,000 deliveries. His numbers have been more accurate, than
anybody.
Troy's.
Yeah.
Although Troy has been, has had a remarkable record. So at 420,000 deliveries, we'll be under 80 cents for sure. Earnings, we may be below 70 cents in earnings. They have a 6 handle. And so I think the stock could go down to, 150.
Okay. All right. So the 8.8, so you're thinking that between now and 8.8, we may not see any real run up based on expectations and hopes for 8.8, but rather we can see some softening between now and then because of numbers.
Yeah. I don't know if it'll go down as far as 150. I recall 150 as a base.
The bottom.
Yeah.
Okay. And then 8.8. So again, Nicholas Gibbs shocked me on Tuesday night. I hadn't really thought about this before. Maybe you saw the show. And he said that once the skills of the FSD are finished, backing up, summon, etc., once the skills are finished, that they could release it now.
Release FSD or robotaxi?
We have to start calling it CyberCab, my people tell me.
Okay.
Yes, the CyberCab are the capability of your and my car to be put out for the system could be released now because it's already way safer than Waymo, and Waymo's available in multiple places and expanding.
Yeah, I'm skeptical of that. I think that it is not sufficiently polished. It's not there. It's not at that point yet. I think it will get there. I still call for mid to late next year.
Mid to late, okay.
Yeah. And
Okay.
so
I don't think that Nicholas, if I remember correctly, I don't think that he thought it would be necessarily. In fact, I know he didn't. He didn't necessarily think it would be available on 8.9, but he thought that it could be. In other words, if they chose to, they could limit it to certain cities or limit it to city driving only, no freeways, or they could do various things, but that it could be released as it is. The Waymo is only 2.5 times more safe than a regular car.
Right. We don't know how many interventions Waymo has on daily drive.
Right.
We have no idea. And so we don't know how many people they have, in the back steering the car out of trouble.
Right. That too.
We know that Cruise had a lot of people.
Right.
We don't know how many Waymo have. So I think it's an open question. And, Elon gave an answer which, puzzled me. He kind of dismissed it. He said, yeah, maybe we'll have somebody, being able to get it out of trouble. In a fairly dismissive tone, which leads me to believe that they haven't seriously considered this and haven't done the, haven't done the sums and haven't done the planning and haven't done the strategic work around that, which leads me to believe that we're still a way away. I think they haven't yet pinned that down, which is strange because 8.8 is upon us. I mean, we're only a few weeks, a couple of weeks away, 10 weeks away or so. So I hear what he says, and he's probably right, but I don't think they've thought that. I don't think they're thinking about that.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, I was actually glad to hear him say it, that they probably would, because I've been saying that for months, that I thought they need to. So I still think they need to. I think it's at least for a while, for a couple of years, it's probably going to be an absolute necessity. It'd be like the thing that they didn't do and then they had to do it later.
You're right. You're right.
All right, Larry. Well, I think we've covered it all, and we will. You're going to be back with us on Friday night too. I know you're traveling to Florida.
Yeah. I hope I've got more energy. I mean, my energy has been a little low. I'm still jet lagged. I don't feel it, but
You
clearly
don't,
I am.
but it's probably there. Yeah, it's probably there.
I had a full day of work today. Wow.
Oh my. Okay. All right. Okay. Well, thanks again for coming on, and to all of you out there, it's been great talking to you.
Thanks, Randy.